Hi, and welcome to the Humanity as Organism Thrives Convergence Room at Peace Week. This is a very special session by Dr. Tom Acklin. I think most of you here do know Tom and his amazing wisdom about food as medicine, functional medicine, but I'd like to introduce him for those of you who don't know him yet. He's a leading edge voice in neuroscience and gut-brain integrity. He's also a neurologist, and Dr. Tom brings his expertise to people suffering with autoimmune conditions and cancer. He's a specialist in brain health and mental stability, loves the sciences of neural mechanisms dictating our habits and behaviors, and is passionate about helping us to understand the power of the microbiome in reversing almost everything we call modern disease. Dr. Tom is also a meditation facilitator, helping people celebrate the struggles in their lives, seeking mind-body clarity. His integrative work helps clarify energy medicine, field dynamics, and gives practitioners of all kinds new ways to optimize their patients' abilities to receive the therapy they provide. And on that note, I'd like to say the floor is yours, Tom.
Floor, ceiling, walls.
All of the above.
We had a fascinating conversation since we're talking structure today, right? As the core need. And I think there may be a couple of folks who haven't been on the platform, but let's just presence this real quick. My English teacher mother would say, that's real quickly, Sir Thomas. So the 7 core needs, we started the week with soil, healthy soil. And day 2 was healthy water. Day 3 was vitalizing food. Day 4 was fresh, clean air. Day 5, which was yesterday, the International Day of Peace, which is why we're all here. Day 5 was physical and emotional safety. And day 6, which is today, is comfortable shelter. Tomorrow will be manifesting potential. And since we just were talking a bit about manifesting potential, tell you what, I'll start with that idea. Is there anybody in the room who wants to say X and produce X with their life? Anybody want things to happen that they say happens? Yeah. Is there anybody who doesn't want that? Maybe that's better. I'm not going to use slides today. I like to work with a lot of slides and I like to work with a lot of visuals. And I think what I'll do is talk for a couple, 10 or 15 minutes. I really want this to be playful and interactive, and you guys are free to interrupt. And if any of the metaphors or pictures that I'm talking about don't make sense, put a question mark in the chat or put your hand up or something, or just blurt in. And I think we'll go, this goes, we have Tara O'Brien at the top of the hour. So we're going to go for about 50 minutes and then take a break. And then we have yet another very powerful session at 1 o'clock. Since you mentioned cancer, we all have cancer and we all have autoimmune disease and we all have multiple sclerosis. We all have Alzheimer's disease. Yeah. And I like to say that the difference between my brain and somebody who has a DSM code of multiple sclerosis on their chart, on their medical chart, is simply that my brain knows how to take the trash out. The sheath, the myelin, and when we measure in multiple sclerosis, we measure myelin basic protein. It's just a serum level of how much junk there is that's still in the body. That's not supposed to be in the body, that causes trouble. And when the body's throwing a tantrum, it's doing the right thing, right? When it's creating inflammation and when it's creating havoc, that is a noise that needs to be made. And we can look at that on the social level too. In fact, I was just looking at this quote. It's a Thich Nhat Hanh quote. "It is not impermanence that makes us suffer. What makes us suffer is wanting things to be permanent when they are not." And that's Thich Nhat Hanh. from the heart of the Buddha's way. And we've got a lot of paradigms that we probably don't even second guess them when we talk about the things that we think we know are true about how stuff is supposed to be the same and supposed to be predictable. It's so supposed to be even controllable. And that's not the way it goes. That's just not the way it goes. And so Hasina and I were joking this morning about me possibly opening the session by saying, yes, we're going to have some fun. Yes, I have some things I want to read to you and play with you and share with you. And I promise you, and I think you all get it, it's not going to go the way I think. And if it does, it's going to be pretty boring, right, for everybody involved. So I do appreciate your energies. We're all doing this together. And I also like to say I like to be surprised by how my sentences get finished. And that might look like words that come from this thing, and it might actually look like words that come from you. So, again, this is interactive, and share and interrupt and make comments if you like. Ask for clarification. I will start with just a tiny bit of science, and I want to talk about sterols for a minute, because a lot of what I do, putting people back into a place where food is medicine, and when we talk about a wide variety of food, and we'll talk about what's food later, but real food, happy food. What is food, right? Did it live a good life while it was alive, and thus is it a valuable acting here? And the purpose of eating a wide variety of foods is to bring a wide variety of bacteria into our gut, and that's called the microbiome. Micro is small, biota is life. The microbiome is in my world, the most important organ of interface and creativity. By first recognize our GI health is the first place we recognize something that's not yet in the body, right? You chew and swallow something that it's still on the outside until the body says, okay, you can come in. You pass customs, you come on in. Maybe we shouldn't use customs metaphors these days. Because of antibiotics and because of the sterility of the food and because of mass manufacturing and monocropping, we've got pretty boring food that has made its way into our grocery stores, right? And a lot of it's not just boring and let's call a spade, lame, not nutritious, and at very best, zero quality. But unfortunately, much of it's very destructive. It brings along hormone disruptors. It brings along glyphosate residues. It brings along toxic chemicals like corn syrup derivatives, and a lot of our sugars, our high spike snacks, and blah blah blah, causing a lot of trouble. So I wanted to focus on hormone disruptors just for a moment, because the purpose of cholesterol in the human body, and a healthy, thriving body, all mammals make cholesterol, all animals make cholesterol, and we build the molecule called cholesterol from the various machinery that comes along with healthy microbiome. So if you've eaten a wide variety of plants like we did when we were hunters and gatherers, and what is a wide variety? It's hundreds of species per week. That sounds like a shock to some people, but that's what we used to eat. And that's one of the very first things we can do when we reinstitute, hey, how do we put our gut back in order? Start instituting novel foods that you haven't eaten in a while. And again, happy foods that lived a nice life. If you do eat animals, if you eat cholesterol, whether that be the flesh or the eggs or the secretions, dairy and cheese, make sure that animal also ate happy things, right? So we all, so I don't think we need to go down that road too much. And if anybody has any questions about that, we can talk about the mechanics of cholesterol briefly if you want to for a minute. I really don't want it to be about that. I want this to be about what's the purpose of it in the first place, and the one more point there. Every life form has some sort of sterol. Animals is called cholesterol. Plants have plant sterols of various types, and even fungi have ergosterol. And even prokaryotes have sterols. What's the purpose of a sterol? Is to create flexibility, right? So every single cell in our body has a membrane. And that dynamic of, do I want this in me versus do I let this stay out there? That's an entry gate phenomenon, right? Membranes exist for the purposes of distinction. This is either a cell, or it's a creature, or it's a customs service, right? And that's, again, not to be built and institutionalized. And I'm going to talk about radicalization of idea, and this is something we've explored deeply this week, is radical ideas and what look like tormenting governments and tormenting ideologies come from an inflexibility. Yeah, we've seen it so many different ways. Mother Nature doesn't work like that. Mother Nature works like that Thich Nhat Hanh quote. It is not impermanence that makes us suffer. What makes us suffer is wanting things to be permanent when they are not. And I would add a second to that, which is artificially creating structure and permanence where life is not foundationally integrated with something like that. So when we put a trans fat into the human body, we have created a structure. And the purpose of cholesterol in the cell membrane is to create a fluidity in the membrane. So just, in fact, everybody, why don't you play with me with this? Fingertips together. Just imagine this is one of your 100 trillion cells. Think of your favorite organ. Is it your brain? Is it your liver? Is it your heart? Whatever it is, this is that, right? I happen to like brains. I'm a neurologist. So we have a fluidity. So I want to pretend this is the membrane around one of my neurons. And it's not shaped like this, but that coating, that thing that distinguishes it, is ever changing. It's not to be built and then be done with. That's what modern medicine wants to do, is to define a structure and then look at the degradation of the structure. And hence we've institutionalized things like multiple sclerosis, which doesn't really exist in nature. It's when we interrupt the process of the body saying, hey, there was something wrong over there. I know how to deal with it. I know how to fix it. And when we interrupt that, either with a pharmaceutical that says you're handcuffed, looks like you got the beginnings of such and such, let's cuff you down, or we continue the kinds of poisons with the trans fats, then we've gotten in the way of that flexibility. So when we're going to talk today about the idea of strength, not as a structure, right? We're not a high rise that's built once and needs to be maintained. We are a fluidity and a flexibility. So strength really is a flexibility. And my world of metabolic flexibility says that when we do put a body in a place where the microbiome is intact, and you do have repair capacities to handle inflammation, whether that came from an injury or an extra strong workout, or just in the normal course of interacting with things, inflammation is the proper response of a body that says, hey, there's something wrong over there, and you better not get in the way of it, right? So anti-inflammatories, unfortunately, have been hailed as savior. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't intervene in emergencies, and it's fantastic that we can. In fact, that's why I went into medicine in the first place, is because I was falling in love with the idea of the neuroleptics when they were first, back in the 80s, when they were discovering SSRIs and antidepressants, and you could actually put a chemical in the body that would would dramatically alter the behavior, right? That was a fun idea. It took a couple of decades to realize how pernicious that idea was. But now when we talk about inflammation, it's usually with a bad connotation. People are afraid of it. And we talk about anti-inflammatories as saviors. So it's not about pulling the inflammatory cascade back. It's about giving the body the ability to complete the cascade, right? Inflammation is always pointing to the proper place. So we're all coming through a pretty challenging chapter here. And you can call that the last couple of years. You can call that the last couple of decades, whoever you are and whatever you're up to in your life, right? We're not going to get away from that. We're always going to have the thing. When we peel the veneer off of the thing and look at the truth, and we're going to talk about addictions today, when we peel the layers off, sometimes that's painful. And when we first put somebody into a detox protocol, we give the body the capacity to speak the truth that it's been trying to speak for a long time. Yeah. And sometimes that's not fun. It is a change that needs to happen. And I think one of the things I've loved navigating this week with so many of these conversations is that these synergist thinkers, very, very beautiful and well-spoken and legacies of success, right? Already having changed the planet in their particular silo, their skill set, building communities, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of very successful work going on out there. And the veneer that we need to peel off right now is pretending that that hasn't been going on, because the people with the microphones, unfortunately, have addicted us into believing that there was a problem. So we're going to move gently into the idea that there actually isn't a problem, and there's nothing that we can't handle, and we are going to get through this. All right. And
So
we're going to, yeah.
Can we speak to then, we've talked about novel foods and reaching into the unknown. So how do we as a collective take those novel foods and really create that flexibility and be able to handle that inflammation as a community when you're talking about that?
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes, thank you. Well, first thing we can do is look each other in the eye, right? They taught us not to do that a while ago. And I think platforms like this are part of that reawakening. And you know, you can hug your brother or sister. You can say hello. This is a good bridge into the conversation about addiction, because we all have heard the phrase, "How are you doing?" sometime this week. And almost always now, we either pretend we didn't hear it, and it's just kind of a greeting, or we've been conditioned into giving a single word answer, right? And so, and just think for yourself, everybody, right now. And if you want to turn your cameras on, and feel free, as many eyes and energies as possible would be welcome for this. So, if I say, "How are you doing?" and there's a real question mark there, notice how many things come through your mind.
And type into the chat if anyone wants to share how they're doing. Type into the chat something that comes into your mind.
And that thing that comes into your mind almost always is, we have a reason for it. If I'm angry, it's because of the HR rep I just got off the phone with. If I'm scared, it's because I'm about to see a guy who I know wasn't real happy with me last time I saw him, like that, right? There's usually a data point that goes along with it if we have a thing. I'd also like to presence the idea that give ourselves permission to know, I am angry. I am inspired. I am anxious. And without any of those coming along with any kind of a moral judgment, the truth is, if somebody said, what are you angry about? You'd come up with something, even if you were on top of the world when he asked you the question, right? We'd come up with something. So it's always in there. We're always in the field, and we have this great menu of ways of being. And sometimes we attend to one preferentially, but rarely do we give ourselves credit for handling all of those at the same time. We're handling them all at the same time. And none of them is right or wrong. But I'll read something because, and then answer your question, Hasina.
Yeah.
This is in the world of fluidity. And so this is building to the idea of social fluidity. And we all know what it's like to be part of an organization of some sort, whether that be a family or a business or a tribe of some sort, fellowship. And listen to this in all of those layers. So membrane, and I was lucky enough to study with Bruce Lipton. He used to call it membrain. He was actually my cell bio professor in med school, and I was a lucky guy. I didn't realize it for many, many years, but he was probably responsible for this. Membrane menu. All complex organisms mobilize a kind of sterol for to construct a kind of membrane, to build a kind of tissue, to participate in a kind of animal, to be participant and contributor in a kind of community or herd or tribe or collective, to define a kind of entity, to evolve a kind of initiative, to distribute or share a kind of message, to inform a kind of complex organism, to inform a kind of complex organism's membrane. So we climb the ladder of both structure and function. And we called this Humanity as Organism Thrives, this convergence room, because we're at a very special place now, I think, moving away from individual sustainability into a place of collective sustainability, where this actually might be one of the most important things I do today, is seeing you people, being with you, right? Being with loved ones and being valued. I want to come back to value too. Remind me to do that. But one of the answers to your question, I think, is to find ourselves at some place on that hierarchy and identify where I'm doing and where I'm not doing, right? And then come up with what we call, and some transformational circles call it a big why. Come up with your big why. And that's hard sometimes because we've been practicing, we've been addicted to what we think is our why for many, many years. And we've got a lot of agreement for people around us. And then all of a sudden, when we realize, wait, you know what, maybe I shouldn't have been doing that. Maybe it's time for something else. And Hasina just did a beautiful session with her sister, Shamima, with one of their Unbreakable Tribe messages. And it was about instantaneous shift, how we don't have to strategize or explain away the past. We actually can get to the place where we can go forward from here, right? That's a capable organism. That's an organism that doesn't have to explain, doesn't have to hold on to scar tissue, doesn't have to navigate the morality of what I did yesterday, right? But we carry a lot of that. That's educated into us. So wanted really to build to an exercise about addiction. And maybe I do have some things to say about actual foods that answer your question, that feed the collective. But if everybody could just pick something that we're addicted to, and it could be a substance or a food. It could even be a supplement. I was telling somebody the other day, N-acetylcysteine. I'm addicted to keeping myself well, and doing some things that I know because the world toxified me. Now it's time to do this, right? So it could be a food, it could be a substance. We could be addicted to exercise. So it could be something physical. It could also be something emotional. Am I addicted to anger? And again, maybe not even intentionally, but PTSD, for example, is a good example of how the body has entrained itself to know I'm still going to be alive tomorrow if I behave like this. If I mobilize this kind of steroid, if I mobilize this kind of stress hormone. We could be addicted to pride. We could be addicted to intellectual interests. Am I addicted to needing to know more? Am I addicted to needing to say something in a creative way, right? I think that's one of mine. Like I told you guys, I like being a little bit surprised by how my sentence is going to be finished when I'm going down what I think are an interesting set of ideas in a soup. And it might be spirit, it might be addicted to meditation, or a certain way that you converse with God, a certain kind of protocol that you have for yourself, or a ceremony. And I may have missed a huge theme too. So everybody just take a few minutes and say, what do I need in my life that I'm not willing to let go of, or it looks like I haven't been willing to let go of? And if you feel like you want to put it in the chat, go for it. If not, just know it for yourself, presence it. And much the way that we said that the inflammatory cascade is the proper response of the body, I'd like to offer that the addiction, whatever it is the proper thing. And again, it's not a moral judgment of any kind. It is the various playgrounds and menus of things that we've educated ourselves into, various insecurities that we let be part of our lives. Some of that's educated in the family, some of it's educated in the systems, some of it's educated, we all said, yes, sir, pretty easily. How contagious it was 3 years ago when they said, cover your face, stop looking at each other. Don't go out, don't touch, right? So lots of different ways. And these anxieties, or these things that are coming up, these coping mechanisms, these places that we go for comfort, some constructive, some destructive, are the proper thing. Yeah.
Can I go to the chat quickly? I'd love to read some of this. I'm addicted to question everything, which actually I think is such a great addiction. And then let me see, my morning routine, being vegan, exercise, being a vegetarian, judgment, need to let it go, validation. And then there are two wonderful ideas to presence. So Tom, if you wanted to share something, I can presence them in a minute, but yeah.
Sure, great. Well, thanks everybody for sharing too. And I see, yeah, Seb, I've seen several things you've shared that are fascinating this week, and validation. Let's presence that idea about the self-worth. I don't know quite how this is going to work, but maybe Henrietta can weigh in on this as well. In the place where we know we have been controlled, and in the place where we know that we've given away our agency, I was playing this morning with the idea that self-worth is an accountability. And so much of what is becoming apparent as we see these novel institutions appear, right? And the novel institution of human being and the novel institution of empowered communities. There have been rumbles, but we're going to explode on the scene with a bang here in a bit. And one of the contexts of this talk, when I was thinking about where have we started muting ourselves, right? Where have we toned down the things that we think are important? Where have we stopped speaking? And some of us by choice, and some of us, systematically deplatformed. I'm one of those. But at some point, we've all known the feeling of having something important to say and not saying it. And it occurred to me that in the place where we've stepped away, that really is a self-worth conversation. And it doesn't diminish the need ever. But I would suggest being accountable is knowing what's important to us and then saying something about it, and then saying and doing something about it. So it's say X, produce X. And that doesn't mean I'm responsible for how you feel. And doesn't even mean I'm responsible for cleaning up the streets or the air or people's microbiome. It means I get to carry a message that's in accord with my values and what I believe. And it's not right by any stretch, right? Everybody's got their own thing. So, but the real question is, am I hurting myself? Am I turning down my self-worth meter when I step away from those things?
Tom, there's a lovely response. Josh responded in the chat. Addiction is a natural response in a sterile environment, which is disconnected to self, others, and nature. I love that.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything to say? Anybody want to say anything out loud about maybe a place where you've stepped away? Because we have, as we've become modern, and we've lost our connection with Mama Earth, and we've lost our connection with all of the natural interfaces.
I'd be happy to speak to that a little bit.
Sure.
As far as this is very personal, but I don't mind sharing. It is a topic that's come up over and over again with my capacity and who I am in the world. Technically, I should be out there more. And I have felt that my words are needed out there. And it's one of the reasons, I'm so graciously invited by Tom and Hasina to participate. So for me, I have past lives where I've been offed. I mean, killed, cut, burned, slashed, whatever. When I spoke the truth, when I was an expert in something and I pointed it out, when I perhaps wasn't as diplomatic as I could have been. And my pinnacle right now, have you ever had this nightmare where you're standing on a tall pedestal and there's just enough room for your feet and there's no way you can climb down that thing? It's very intense because you have to choose. Obviously, you wake up before you kill yourself or fall down. That has been my precipice for some time now. And I have found that in the emotional workings that I am not supposed to be conforming, and which is basically the word that came to mind when you spoke of, everybody has stopped talking about their truth or they get deplatformed when they do. What has brought us to this is the conformity. As a European living in the US, I am always totally amazed at the inability for people to see that they are actually not individuals like they have claimed for decades, but that they are actually a mass of moved and manipulated opinions, especially those that are not awake. So to me, and that is where conformity basically has lost its platform, even though they desperately try to keep it back in the lives of all of us. And that goes for food, it goes for self-worth, it goes for fluid membranes, for juicy cholesterol in our bodies, right? To me, this is something that's really important, because like you both embrace the holism of life, it's sometimes difficult to take apart these different questions and not assume that they are all a part of the whole. And with every mention or with every emphasis, and that you say it's not right or wrong, we can see just how intensely the need to conform and not offend anyone, God forbid, we're going beyond the status quo of, oh, I don't mean to step onto your territory. That's a lot of BS. Let's step onto each other's territories because it grows us, right? Okay, I stop yelling now. I'm done.
That's gorgeous. That's, yeah, right on. Yeah, our job is to offend, and just use that word, in the most literal sense. Our job is to interface, and in any interface with nature, there is a learning, right? That's a lot of what that membrane flexibility is all about, is because we're always at war. And again, negative connotation to that word, but let's put the positive spin on it. We're always in interface. If we're not, we're pretty much gone. And if we do radicalize and rigidify and decide we're going to take that piece out, brilliant speaker last night was talking about the ants, for example. If we continue to decimate the soil and the ants really disappear, if we were to kill them, there'd be no life on this planet within 10 years. And he said, conversely, if we disappeared, the ants would be just fine. So we are the cancer because we're trying to rigidify, because we've lost, and I'm talking about this tiny little portion. I think most of us on these calls are in a tiny little portion of what I would call a sequestered reality. I think more of the planet lives in interface, lives barefoot, lives gardening, they live eating real food, right? But a lot of us in privilege, unfortunately, have been systematically sterilized.
Sorry, Tom, can Tara weigh in on the conversation as well? I know she had something to say.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Oh no, I'm in the flow of it. I had a moment of not being able to unmute, which is very funny because we're talking about being able to speak our voice. But Henrietta, so much of the Henriette, is that right?
Either.
So much of the passion of what I could feel, and then Tom weighing in after that. There's something about what you're pointing to be the interruption or the disruption to the conformity. And the thing that strongly comes through to me is that we be so conscious of our ability and capacities to stay in relationship, even as we are the disruptor. Or there's just another way that we are alienating some aspect of what we're trying to change. So so much of this conversation is bringing me to the recognition of how fractured and how even the conformity has come from trying to secure some need of belonging, but it's been misunderstood and then misappropriated.
Can
Beautifully
I speak
said.
to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tara, this is a really good point. It brings me to the origin of everything that has caused conformity and that has caused us to work in this two-dimensional reality where we really have no business. And I don't know, is this okay to talk about the DNA overlay I mentioned to you last time?
Go for it. Yeah, I was going to talk about epigenetics. Yes.
Okay, yeah, epigenetics. I mean, I love what you said about Bruce Lipton, how lucky you really were. That is absolutely fantastic. When maybe 2 weeks ago, I had this download, if you will, in the morning, early morning, right? That is when things happen in my truth. And I realized that everyone imagine the image of our DNA, our two-strand DNA. And now imagine a membrane overlaying that two-strand DNA. And whoever, whatever geneticists did that, it was a limitation that was put in place a long time ago. And it's a limitation that has us experience the world and this third dimension with a majority of feelings being negative. So blame, shame, guilt, pain, fear, right? So everything we are experiencing, because our DNA, it's our cells, it's what we want to do, it is that how we want to create and what we want to manifest, all comes from the DNA. You imprint it, you desire it, you follow through, there it is, okay? That membrane caused us to be so focused on the things that don't work, on the things that we must fear, on the things where unless we are conform, we will not be rewarded, won't belong, like what you just mentioned, right? I mean, this whole piece of it's being crumbled now. It's going, okay, it's going. So it's very confusing how we're all finding these things with each other. And I think we're butting up against that in reality in the last 2.5 years. I mean, that was like such a wake-up call, right? So anyway.
Well, those two ideas go together really nicely, I think. And so the take home, you know, after Tara's comments, I think the take home out of your what you illustrate as a dilemma, Henrietta, is let's not stop. You know, we have to keep doing this, even if it looks like it's anxiety producing, even if it looks like, right, that's the game. That is life. Life is staying in the circus. And if you leave the circus, you've left, right? If you turn off the inflammation, or you demonize the person, or you slap them in jail, or you do whatever you do.
Well, that's what we've been doing. Right.
Then we're not meeting life on life's terms. And this is what I talk about at the tissue level for the last maybe 10, 15 years. And I'm realizing that it really is a social fabric conversation. And you put a body in a place where it actually can handle whatever the fluctuation is. You know, we don't want to handcuff our blood pressure at 120/80. We want our blood pressure to be able to get back to normal after we've fainted or bled out, or after we've had a great workout. And similarly, you know, we're not going to, we continue to learn as we continue to interface. We don't want to not breathe a virus. You want to learn from the virus, and you want to learn from the other life forms, and there's wisdom there. So we could dive into that, you know, from a physiologic flexibility conversation. But the same way we want a wide variety of foods and a wide variety of exercise and a wide variety of novel interface, touch a lot of people, breathe a lot of different kinds of air, breathe, you know, in a lot of different countries, like that. That's a healthy, thriving creature. Emotionally, similarly, we overlay an emotional flexibility that says, okay, I can stay here, I can stay in the circus, right? So it brings it back, I think, to a personal accountability where the to thine own self be true really means stop the thing that's poisoning you, whatever that is. It doesn't have to happen today, because realistically we're addicted to our ways, but without demonizing, without giving ourselves negative marks, realize that this is what life is. It is this kind of a varied menu of things that other people would say are good ideas, and some people say are bad ideas. And I think that's why these conversations are so important. You know, then you have that emotional, you give yourself permission to do that, really look in the mirror, you know, say what's working, what's not working, and then give yourself, you make yourself a promise that says, I'm not leaving. I'm staying here in this, you know, I'll continue to look. You know, the hardest thing, one of the things I'm addicted to, by the way, is having one of these in my hand a lot. And I actually work with clients and patients sometimes. I just said to a lady yesterday, because we've been talking for months about her keeping a food journal. And every time we talk, you know, she pays me $200 for a 60-minute dissection of me asking her questions about what she's been eating. That's not a really good use of her time. And I've been suggesting to her she could save a lot of money if she actually would use this, or, you know, the electronic version. But keeping a journal is, it's so scary. It's so scary to actually write down and see what we're doing, right? So that would be another thing I'd offer. That's another answer to your earlier question, Hasina, about, you know, what's the way forward is, yes, we have protocols that work, and yes, we can systematize, we can say which foods go where and which supplements, but the real way forward is that whatever it is, whatever protocol you've chosen, stay in the circus, keep track, have personal accountability with yourself, and say, you know, did I do last week what I said I would do or not? And again, one is not better than the other. And if you don't do both, you're probably not human, right? And if we're not failing, and if we're not dropping the ball on some things, we're probably not up to very much in life. And we're certainly not going to learn, you know, just like that inflammatory interaction is a teacher, inflammatory interaction with our own emotional needs and psychological walk through life. That's the teacher too, but we have to see it. So that would be my goal. Get a pen in everybody's hands.
Tom, there's a question in the chat. Seb asks, can you talk about the exogenous immune system and the volatilome, if I'm pronouncing that right? Yes.
Probably I can talk about that. I think you guys, I mean, most of you know me, and I can talk about anything. I don't know what you mean by exogenous immune system, but I can, especially after this week, if you want to clarify, feel free to come off, Mike. But what if there's no such thing as exogenous? Yeah, I was trained inside physiologic understanding that says maintenance of this thing called Tom is the goal, right? But we're seeing very profoundly these past decades now, and especially, you know, so many of the speakers this week have illustrated in such elegant ways how interconnected we are and interdependent we are. And when we're looking at these core needs, the health of my immune system is almost meaningless. That's what you know, they taught us to call endogenous immunity or personal immunity. But if I don't take care of the soil in my neighborhood, I'm going to be in trouble fast. If I don't take care of the animals in my neighborhood, I'm going to be in trouble fast. If I don't take care of the water in my neighborhood, right? And these things all can go into the world of immunity for me. There, I could play that out. What do you mean by volatilome? Maybe that's like going to the carnival and choosing which ride you want to spike your pressure, right? Which kind of volatility do we want to step into today? It's an interesting idea. Maybe that's something we can do, is I'll make a list of the things that we go to voluntarily to you know, where do I go when I want to get high on my horse and be on my bandbox. I got plenty of platforms I can walk into knowing that I'm the preacher in the place. Anybody know that feeling? Yeah. Where do you go when you want to be high and mighty?
Tom, answer to your question, Seb says, from pheromones to spike shedders or other kinds of volatile compounds we release.
Oh, yeah, interesting. Well, we're going to close the room here at 5 of. So that's a huge conversation, and I wasn't going to say anything about this, but tell you what, since I think one of our gifts to each other is to be able to tell the truth, and now this is on my mind, so this is a great example. Now that this is on my mind as an answer to your question, Seb, my brain says, hey, you know, if I was alone with him in a room, I'd say this out loud, but there's 30 people here, and I don't want to say this out loud, and this is being recorded. right? That's that handcuff. So I'm going to break through this handcuff in real time. You guys are here. Thank you for being here and helping me break through the handcuff. So I was with a buddy about 3 weeks ago now. So 3 weeks ago, he had a very bad COVID, right? Or whatever this is. 3 days after he thought he recovered, he got jabbed. Total medical contraindication. The doc never ever should have done that for many reasons. But jabbed, negative test so he could go back to work because his employer required it. And then the day after the negative test, I was with him in his apartment in Virginia Beach and stayed the night. I was there for about 24 hours. And I was fine. And I came home and I was about as sick and in pain and disoriented as I can remember. And I'm a pretty healthy dude. And I have had a couple of episodes of this thing over the past couple of years, not nearly like this, but muscle ache, fascia lightening, neuromuscular issues, and really just exhausted for the better part of a week. Huge swelling with my tongue. I had an esophagitis. So that's all to say that yes, the dynamic is true. And those of us who know it's true probably should be speaking about it a little bit more. A lot of us are getting in trouble for speaking it, of course, as you guys know. But the exosome, I don't think it's something we're going to get away from either. I think it's there, and it's always going to be there. And just like glyphosate is now part of this planet, and it's almost inescapable. It's in most rainfall in most places of the world. It's in most water tables, whether or not it's in the farms, in your county or not. Mama Nature doesn't have boundaries, borders, and little by little, we're gonna reach this. But I think it underlines for me, Seb, is that the taking out the trash idea is the very most powerful thing we can do right now. And it starts at a personal level. We put our bodies in a place where we get to take out the trash, right? That's an immune competence issue, because we can't sequester, and we're not going to be sheltered from this anymore. We are breathing the stuff in the air. Unfortunately, now that they've unleashed 5G, we are regularly, as when we go in public, even if it's not in your home, you're walking in and out of these various novel electromagnetic frequency clouds that are quite toxic. And so those kinds of things. And I don't think we're going to escape it. So our job is to learn how to handle the pain in a real novel way. And then we get to a place where what I call the immune shrug. And it's not that it's irrelevant, and it's not that we shouldn't clean up the atmosphere. We need to clean up the electromagnetic frequency airwaves. We need to clean up the air itself. We need to clean the water. But in the interim, we have to put ourselves in a place where we can navigate those challenges as powerfully as we can. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I hope this was fun and useful, and please find me. My contact information is on our Trello board, and I think most of you know where to get me anyway. And love to hear the feedback. Would love to hear the feedback. Any thoughts you got?
Tom, I'm putting your email address in the chat. Would that be all right? If people
Sure.
want to be added to your broadcast.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to be added to Dr. Tom's broadcast, which he does regularly, and it's really fun, just email him and you can find him that way. And thank you, Tom. This has been just so amazing. And I can speak to all of this. I love everyone's courage, standing up and speaking their truth. And Tom, you started this discussion, and it's been such a a walk your talk kind of a discussion. So thank you everyone for contributing your energy, your words, your thoughts to this. And Tom, thank you so much for all your wisdom and for speaking your truth in this wonderful environment in Peace Week.
Well, it's an honor, and thank you. You're probably more than half partly responsible. You're certainly partly responsible, and probably half or more for what comes out of my mouth these days. So thank you for co-creating. It's a great pleasure. And Shamima, thank you for handling all of the behind the scenes. You work tirelessly back there with a big grin on your face. Very appreciated.
Okay. Recording has stopped.